But within stopping power is, I think, half the battle, where how many things, given that vast amount of energy, not only the degrees of which make it impressive, but the real value systems are based upon how much something is processed and quantized. And this would mean like a definite amount. So between like a fire and stellar on planet Earth to like the sun, I bet you could find a chemtrail to see if anyone's been doing arson or how stuff got started in any case, but that one is flamboyantly a hot topic on whose hand is in cookie jar or how much it naturally occurred. And so the stopping power, once again, with trucks, there was this one guy who was driving one, and those things weigh so many tons that once you get going above a certain speed, you can slam the brakes, but the truck will continue to roll. And this is what succumbed, I think, like 4 people into a massive fireball, which ended their life. Now, however, that could have been stopped if he would have read the signs on the side of the road. But when you're flying that fast and you've never seen a sign read something so specific that if you're a truck pulled to this off-ramp so that you can brake, because there's special roads that would allow you to brake for this hard turn coming up, you know, and he didn't read it. So as opposed to like brakes being lackluster, if they're improved, and you know the difference between air brakes and regular brake shoes, if there's like one better than the two, just how like computers got introduced to a cooling system with water, there's water cool systems or fans, if there was a third one, to all describe how much nuclear is. And that's why Russia is so dangerous, is because they're a nation that's based off of Christian morals, which would indicate that their families are nuclear families. This means that is in physics, you've got one of the biggest things, engineering. That's a fact, check the statement. I meant to say in engineering, one of the biggest traits is a property of physics. This thing, a 4-stroke engine, would strive to achieve something more than what it actually is. A vessel as an engine, but missing an embodiment. This type of arc has a potential to outnumber a tiny screw. If a tiny screw had the most proper placements and handling of pressures, you could put 2 and 2 together and output a firearm with infinite ammo running as cylinders of an engine. How, you might ask? Within Euler bridging about a computer made from stuff that is beyond what silicon microchips are. The lay of the land. But back to the toxicology reports, how important these things are. Everyone's made different, but you know how many times people have looked at each other and be like, oh, your facial structure reminds me of this person, or people relate others to animals, what animal they look most to. They're all doing this as like toxicology reports. And in these giant mass shootings, they like hold the toxicology reports. And so like that information should be readily available so that more parallels can be drawn out with what a Bridget would have to it. And luckily, what an end cap is can be dressed up as like 2 marshmallows with a pointy tip at the end. That can make for how much of the following: an O-ring, spectacular, with all these triangles at the end like a starfish, can add to what a pressure system could be more complex as when dialing in specific notes. You know, this is what algorithms do, but if you can do it with pressure instead of electricity, this was what would make a steam engine be of a caliber of a firearm, but then with the combustibility, aka ammo, of like a cylinder engine, if done properly. And the precision to do this is nothing short of what nuclear physics has, but could be described as like how much of a screw, if done so correctly in the right place and screwed in tight, all those rings about the bottom of the screw and the screw head, all the angles, there's like 8 points of articulation to a screw. If those 8 points are all just derived from one O-ring and an end cap that is just a bit more like fanciful than a regular one, well then that is the exact thing that would be a keystone to such a contraption, a steam engine acting as an 8-cylinder engine and a firearm with infinite ammo. The same thing of what could be the missing link of how to read off algorithms with a computer that's made from natural things. And I think like the real analogy behind that statement is how much that like the carbon is being bad and pointed at, but then how much of like temperature is bad, and how much the temperature is bad is like how bad the carbon is. And you see that end of the cycle almost as like a death point on itself. And so the more that you understand, wait a second, we're carbon-based life forms, and plants have carbon within their cycle. So by trying to eliminate those, you're proclaiming life to be death, and then a temperature deviation as a deterrent for determination of termination. You gotta call a spade a spade. There's like, when it comes to death and life, death is cut off with only so much description. And so when it is like something that spreads a lot, it's the same as just saying that it's cancerous. That's the biggest frog I've seen in a minute. There's a 4-stroke engine, and there's a reason why that has been something that is measured up to what a rocket is. There's like these things called T-Rex rockets or Velociraptor rockets. In any case, it's pretty much the best that it can get. So then you start stacking them together, knowing that that's the maximum output, is then just bunching a whole bunch of them together. This is an argument that an elitist would have for handling a population of a planet, seeing that people are always growing more and more, and that the recesses are growing vaster and vaster, even though they would like to have Americans get 300,000 abortions a year. It isn't quite making the cut. So, with the intuition of knowing how much dimensional analysis is undermined, having more of better symmetries to dissymmetries only makes for attaching what one screw could be. A screw is ostensibly like 5 points of articulation if you read up on what it actually is. And if all those articulated points are measured up to just like what one O-ring is and one end cap is, if a O-ring was just dressed up with some points around it, and the end cap was just like 2 marshmallows with a point sticking out the tip of it, you know, quirky stuff like that, but measured precise to a T. So then in dotting all the I's, you know, connecting an O-ring to a screw with an end cap would give the maximum potential for a four-stroke engine to have the energy output enough to measure one screw's accurate placement. It's with these feats that mathematics can be put behind it to deduct stuff that would think are immeasurable unless taken full advantage with, dictating elitists to go in unison to form what is known as a great reset. This is where sensors are jacked up and passports for your health to be proven to step inside of a store and buying and selling is something that is now for an elite class. So that's one way of death. The way of four-stroke enginings and looking at how to recalibrate pollution is a shot in the dark of what life could encumber.